Hello everyone! In this video we will be analyzing female representations in popular television series of the past 2 decades, mostly zeroing in on contemporary examples. We will be discussing the complexity of specific well-known characters in popular culture and touch upon the reception and criticism, aiming to show the reflection on the socio-cultural context that these shows provide.
To begin with, this video will be specifically focused on gender performativity and the roles portrayed in TV shows. So, it would be important to define what a gender role is. They are described as cues about what sort of behavior is expected to be appropriate for individuals, based on the values of the societal context they develop in.
Gender performativity refers to the way we are taught from our societal context to behave based on our perceived gender. In our recent orientation, the social expectation of a woman has been charged with nurturing behavior, expected to stay at home in a more motherly role, while men are expected to be leaders and financial providers. Thus, these expectations are a mere reflection of the different levels of power that males and females hold in society, with men in direct contact with money having power over women. These expectations conclude with the creation of stereotypes in a standardization of human behavior.
Therefore, in this video we're going to criticize and reflect on these stereotypes, trying to wonder what's next on the TV show Gender Portrayal. Let's look at what we have learned from the recent and not so recent past, beginning with our complex female character representations. This is a moment for a cool transition.
We are starting with a character that was controversial during her time on television because of her provocative, ahead of the time attitude towards gender roles. Her presence made the double standard between men and women noticeable, which created some stir, not only in pop culture, but also inside a TV show where she was hardly judged. Even though she provoked lots of controversy during her time, she's probably the only character that aged well from the 2000s. We are of course talking about Samantha Jones from Sex and the City. Witty, self-driven, sensual, and unrelenting in her beliefs and life choices, Samantha Jones was the heart of Sex and the City. She brought nuance and depth to her character that would, by stereotypical standards, be classified as a femme fatale. She's constantly attacked based on her choices, even by the 3 women who we come to know as her closest friends, and yet somehow it seems like she's the most fulfilled. Her life could be seen as revolving around many different men, but in reality, it all centers around her. Samantha always chose herself and stayed true to her own spirit, therefore making sure she never lost herself in the process. Not for any man, nor for our friends, society. And she will always remind everyone of that. In the early 2000s, when the show became a hit, a great deal was said about how prototypical and groundbreaking it was in terms of breaking the boundaries of female representation. This view does not hold true to this day, as so many problematic aspects of it came to the surface. But, as I mentioned before, what has stood the test of time is this character, and the absence of Samantha is very indeed noticeable in a much less successful reinstallation of the original show called And Just Like That.
Some of the most central characters on this beloved sitcom are represented, much like the entire narrative, through the eyes of a male character, Ted Mosby, who is narrating the story of meeting the love of his life to his 2 kids. Lily, Robin, and Tracy, the 3 central women and protagonists Ted Mosby's life, feel like cutouts of different types of male fantasies. Firstly, Lily represents a mother figure for Ted and for the entirety of their friend group, depicted as a caring, sweet, wise, and nurturing friend that is there to guide him through the mishaps of his dating life, often through manipulation. At the same time, she is also laid-back, nerdy, free-spirited, and her feminine side does not stop her from participating in the more fun-related masculine activities, without of course sacrificing her image, making for the quote-unquote perfect woman. Being a sitcom, of course the narrative does not usually delve into difficult topics, and yet when the character was given some depth by integrating in the storyline her troubles with motherhood and lifelong commitments, there was a very critical reaction from the audience, which seemingly wanted to stay in the bubble of what a female character that is domestic, sweet, and caring like Lily should be. This reaction reveals a lot of hypocrisy, considering that the protagonist Ted consistently engages in disrespectful behavior toward his love interests, justifying it through the argument that they were not quote-unquote the one. Therefore, throughout the span of 9 seasons and 10 years, Lily is not afforded the luxury of making any mistakes, needing to constantly uphold these unrealistic standards of perfection, being expected to follow the traditional paths of marriage and motherhood without a shred of doubt. When twice this facade of perfection is momentarily shattered, the character is crucified by loyal fans, while the male characters are applauded for continuously engaging in disrespectful and toxic patterns of behavior for comic relief.
It's good to have you back.
Thanks. Oh, hey, look, there's still some messages on here.
Hey, Marshall, are you lying on the couch right now moping about Lily? You are, aren't you? Well, stop it. She's not worth it. You gotta get over that Grinch.
But I didn't say Grinch. I said a bad word. A very, very bad word.
Oh, fudge.
But I didn't say fudge.
Here's another fun little trivia game. It's called Name That Bitch.
It is
Wrong. You're thinking of Santa because it was Christmas.
Robin, on the other hand, is in many ways seemingly the opposite of Lily, wanting to avoid commitment, children, and the traditional concept of domestic life. She is represented as more of a career woman, fading into another stereotype. Probably, her whole personality comes from the beginning of her childhood, in which her father raised her in what could be considered a boyish style, teaching her how to fight, hunt, fish, and play hockey. Robin stands out for being an incredibly attractive and driven woman, something that broke the boundaries of attractiveness, dumbness portrayed in earlier television. Also, something worth noticing is the various contrasts and arguments that she has with Marshall and Ted, who as men are more connected to their feminine side than Robin herself. Even though her character was complex in many other ways, she was ultimately written and designed to be Ted's and Barney's special other. Her whole personality breaks down by the end of the show, in which apparently everything she did as an independent woman is just part of the way to get to being Ted's partner.
Then there's Tracy, the mother, who was the main purpose behind the TV show, and the introduction of her character was anticipated throughout 7 seasons, until she was briefly shown in the last episode of season 8 and fully in a couple of episodes during the final season. Her appearance in the show was a total of 14 episodes. One could say that this is very little, comparing that the TV show has a total of 9 seasons and 208 episodes spanning almost a decade on air. Tracy is always described as a very sweet and good person by Ted and others, fitting the stereotype of the innocent and cheery woman. It seems that her character has no faults, nothing unlikable, and does not make any mistakes. Taking a critical view, this could also be because of her lack of screen time and only existing to further aid Ted's storyline so that he, spoiler, eventually ends up with Robin. Tracy is there to fulfill Ted's needs for her family and conveniently dies, making her sacrifice herself so that Ted can finally be with Robin. It seems that Tracy has no personality but that of Ted. Starting as an innocent and abused character, who ultimately at the end of the first season of the immensely popular TV show Game of Thrones, gains her strength by standing up to the people who abused her and regaining power over herself. As the viewers journeys with her towards her path of reclaiming the Iron Throne, back from the people who ousted and killed her family, they grow with her as she starts to learn the ways of the world and what is expected from her. This growth also opens the possibilities of making mistakes, which she ultimately does make. But it is clear that Daenerys learns from them and wants to make the lives of her subjects better. It seems that Daenerys is judged harshly for the same choices the male Bardacounts make and were used against her to justify the destroying of her character arc as a strong queen who stands up for the weakest and turns her into an evil and mad queen in season 8. Her caring for her subjects was very evident during the seasons, where she showed how much she cared by trying to make a better system. Every choice Daenerys made, good or bad, seems to be held against her in extreme ways, even a small mistakes as an excuse why she was not fit to rule. Ultimately, Daenerys seems to be held towards a double standard because of her gender when you compare her to the other male characters in her position, or lower ones but still with much power and influence. How fair can we judge her character arc and the ultimate demise of it in the final season?
With an immense amount of support, Breaking Bad has been recognized as the best TV show of the past decade. It presents one of the most loved gray moral characters and the most hated woman in TV show, according to the top 10 most hated women in TV history by IMDb.
My name is Skylar White, yo. My husband is Walter White, yo.
Weirdly, the reasons why Skylar White was considered to be the most annoying character are quite absurd, considering that her husband, Walter White, was an infamous drug lord that undergoes the transition between being a chemistry loser to a powerful killer. We should reposition our opinions on Skylar White. She was catalogued to be her husband's bully, while if we profoundly analyze her situation, she was actually a loving wife in an impossible situation. She was charged as the antithesis of the supporting housewife. Once she accepts her situation and embraces her darker side, the audiences, still empathetic towards Walter's thrive and success, thought Walter was a hypocritical wife seduced by the drug's money. Even the actress who played the role noted in a New York's article, Walter's wife was relegated to the role of a drag, a shrew. Though many critics believe that this hatred phenomenon comes from the perfectly acted Walter by Bryan Cranston, it is undoubtedly that there's a sexist manner towards the character of Skylar. Taking our conceptual framework as cue, Skylar's attitude fulfills the nurturing female role supposed to be achieved by a woman. She was supporting before she knew the truth hiding in her own household, and once she discovered it, she persisted as a comprehending wife in her own way, and without a doubt, a loving mother. While Breaking Bad doesn't really have heroes, we should now reconsider the victims of the show.
Things that I did. You need to understand.
If I have to hear one more time that you did this for the family.
I did it for me.
Next up on our list is the very negatively discussed representation of Ellie Williams in the TV show adaptation of The Last of Us. There was an extremely cruel response to the casting of Ellie, as fans of the video games and several other internet trolls decided to doom this casting choice based on the looks of the actress before the show even aired. Despite masking it as a feeling of portrayal towards the source material, the extremely popular video game, this harsh reaction reveals something deeply problematic about people's expectations about the representation of female characters on television, which is even more peculiar in this case since the character is a child. Similar reactions were had towards the casting of Joel Miller, perfectly brought to life by Pedro Pascal, however those critiques were less persistent.
It's me. Look, it's me. It's me. It's okay. Okay.
Not focusing at all on the immaculate performance, audiences continued to question this representation, sticking to the superficial levels and trying to excuse the bashing of the character's appearance. However, Ellie's character, an initially distrusting, rough, tomboyish, and at times annoying teenage girl that does not identify as particularly girly, is perfectly captured by Bella Ramsey, doing justice to the essence of the original character, while adding depth and nuance, as well as a more realistic depiction of what a female character under these circumstances looks like. Therefore, the reception of this complex character points to another pretentious aspect of the contemporary so-called politically correct society, which vouches for representation continuously and yet cannot accept inclusivity for female characters. Moving on, it would be worthwhile to mention the controversial show The White Lotus, looking at how it poured complexity into the characters. Among the plethora of interesting, peculiar, and sometimes outright shocking character representations that this series has offered, second season characters Daphne and Harper stand out due to the slowly unraveling complexity they demonstrate. As parts of two different couples vacationing together in Sicily, their starting point is that of being complete opposites. Harper is a serious, sophisticated, grounded, clever, and judgmental lawyer, while Daphne is a fun, sweet, carefree, enthusiastic housewife and mother, presented in the beginning as floating in a little cloud of ignorance. As they get to know each other and interact, it is interesting to see that neither of them are as tightly secured in a little stereotypical box as they initially seem to be. Harper secretly desires the carefree nature of Daphne, constantly trying to get her husband Ethan to let loose and be intimate with her, as he seems to be experiencing sexual frustration and the lack of being seen, and expresses her lack of interest in just being loved and not desired. As an act of undeserved revenge towards Ethan, she kisses his designated douchebag of a friend, letting go of her standards and judgments to get what she wants. On the same note, Daphne is not as sweet and clueless as she appears to be. Seemingly accepting her husband's constant infidelities and cruelties, in reality she has her own side romances and preoccupations that help her support the choice to stay in such a marriage, while at the same time fulfilling her own needs through whatever means she deems necessary to quote-unquote not feel like a victim. Although many have rightly deemed these characters controversial, they feel endlessly interesting as they constantly surprise you with the ways in which they navigate their relationships with themselves, their sexualities, their partners, and each other. What is interesting about it is also that they seem to be the central focal point of that storyline, as the narrative does not really dig too deep into the husbands Ethan and Cameron, the successful money-making college buddies, but instead zeroes in on their wives. This is refreshing because it is often that female characters are seen through the rearview mirror of their male interests, playing the supporting wives, the victims, and so on. Here these expectations are subverted, and whether you like these characters or not, you can't help but admit that they provide a new essence to the concept of wife as seen on mainstream television.
Do whatever you have to do not to feel like a victim of life. Just use your imagination.
Last but not least, we would love to touch upon the 2016 TV comedy drama series Fleabag, featuring a lot of aspects of complexity and subversion of gender expectations seen in recent years on television. Fleabag can be seen as a very refreshing take on femininity, feminist representation, and character complexity. First and foremost, it feels very naturally, effortlessly, and subtly feminist, in that it avoids gender performativity altogether, as the character consistently tries to be a good feminist and in the traditional and stereotypical sense fails. And yet she has the essence of a very authentic, flawed, fluid, ambiguous character you root for, and yet cannot always justify, making her feel multidimensional. At the same time, you notice her complexity slipping through the cracks of her struggle between her own self-image and what she wishes to project to the audience through the direct address towards the camera.
Her personal issues, complex nature, wittingly hilarious commentary, and unpredictability make for a capturing female character that, in her effort to achieve being a feminist, succeeds precisely through her extremely humane failures.
Please raise your hands if you would trade 5 years of your life for the so-called perfect body.
We're bad feminists. Her morality and ethics can quickly be judged and questioned because of her actions, or lack thereof, and decisions. Nevertheless, her empathic nature and her relatable personality works as an advocate for herself. She is well known for her sarcastic and self-judgment attitude, constantly falling into relatable inner dialogues.
She's considered to be a complex character with a lot of contradictory personality traits.
Fuck's sake! I know people in this building. Hi, Claire. Hi, Leslie.
She's kind-hearted, but also selfish. She's loud, but also awkward. She's ultimately very deep and real, just as any other human being, a real girl next door phenomenon, in which everyone could be just as flawed, distressed, self-destructive, yet smart, witty, funny, driven, and intelligent as her. Her significant love interest, the hot priest, is a big part of her journey but doesn't overwhelm it, and ultimately leads to self-acceptance. Something remarkable about the whole show is that our main character, who we call Fleabag, is actually an unnamed character in the show. This is addressed by the writer, creator, and protagonist, as intending to do a subtext of her own Fleabagginess. Someone meaning unpleasant and dirty. The character remains nameless, deep, relatable, and somehow also mysterious and ambiguous.
This is a moment for a cool transition.
Through these examples, we aim to show some of the hits and misses as well as the successes in terms of female character representations in recent popular television narratives, and how their societal receptions reveal how we perceive of the female gender and how we still hold on to certain stereotypes. Even though this video doesn't have the intention of demonizing what has already been done in TV show history, we do want to question ourselves on what can be done to deconstruct and reconstruct certain ideals in a more liberating way.
Lately, with the breakthrough of social movements such as the postmodern feminist movement, there's an intention to break the stereotypes and expectations of these gender roles and norms, understanding that if they were once learned, they can be unlearned through the deconstruction of the roles.
Therefore, with the title of our video, What's Next? We want to raise awareness regarding typical, in-your-face stereotypes and further focus on the future portrayal of female characters in film and TV shows. With this in mind, for future representations, we expect and wish for female characters that they are not tied to the known pre-existing stereotypes, but rather play upon them in exciting ways, or provide extensions of fluidity to our understanding of what once relates to the female gender. Barriers in the representation should continue to be broken, and reflections upon receptions of TV characters should be made in order to understand what they reveal about what stereotypes we unconsciously internalize. So that in the end, we all can be seen as equally complicated characters with multiple layers within us that are exciting to explore.